Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the BMA's Making It into Medicine event, where we're looking at the insights into studying and working in the medical field. I'm Dr. Tinaye Mapako. I'm a Foundation Year 1 doctor, so just a newly qualified doctor working in hospitals in Lancashire. Really excited to have you all for this event, and we have some really exciting presentations. We have the chair of the Medical Students Committee, Becky. We have from Council, from the BMA's council body, Dr. Jingy Alom, and we also have the wonderful Dr. Twishaa Sheth with us, who will be doing some presentations earlier, and then we'll have a panel discussion. We'll be responding to the questions that you've already submitted. But before we start, we have a wonderful video introduction from Dr. Lateefa Patel. She's our acting representative body chair, so she's in charge of making sure that all the policy that members pass at the BMA are enacted, and I believe she's the first junior doctor and the first woman of colour to be chair of our representative body. Dr. Lateefa Patel is a bit of an icon in the BMA, so let's hear from her now.
Hello and welcome to Making It in Medicine, insights into studying and working in the medical field. My name is Lateefa Patel. I'm a paediatric respiratory junior doctor in the northwest of England and the interim BMA representative body chair at the British Medical Association. The British Medical Association, or BMA for short, is the trade union and professional body for doctors and medical students in the UK. We are committed to widening participation in medicine and ensuring that all students who are interested in entering the medical field have a fair opportunity to do so. Our widening participation work includes holding school events such as this one, and also the Aspiring Doctors programme, which uses our network of doctors and medical students to help those interested in applying for medical school. We believe that it is important to help bridge the gap in knowledge and access so that medicine is a career option for anyone who wishes to become a doctor, regardless of their social or economic background. I was born and grew up in Blackburn. I come from a single income family and I'm one of 5 children. My mum did the most amazing job and brought us up believing we could be anything we wanted to be. We all joined the public sector. My dad did all the school runs between work, and I remember the many mantras on the way to school emphasising that we could indeed be whatever we wanted. I grew up in one of the most deprived areas in the country. I had no doctors in the family. In fact, no one had been to university. I held on to that belief that impossible was nothing, and I was actually inspired to become a doctor by the programme Casualty, and I worked really hard, just like you. I actually attended a session similar to this one held by the Liverpool Medical Institution. Only 7 years later, I was their vice president. I volunteered as a tea person at my local hospital to gain work experience. I applied to medicine and here I am. My journey to date has included research alongside my training and teaching medical students at the local university. And of course, this role, which not only allows me to support my colleagues and represent them on a national and international platform, but also meet and hopefully encourage the next generation of our colleagues. That's you. We firmly believe that medical students, doctors, our NHS workforce should be a reflection of our society, of the people we serve. That is what enables us to work together as a team to help our patients' journeys through their healthcare. Widening participation helps make that possible. You're about to hear from 3 brilliant people today who are all at different stages in their medical career. Your first speaker is Becky, who is a final year medical student and co-chair of our BMA Medical Students Committee for the 2020-2021 session. She is the proud owner of an attention deficit hyperactive disorder brain, ADHD, despite the challenges it can present at times and the more widening path to medicine it has meant she has had to take. Previously, Becky studied medicinal chemistry at Newcastle University, where she also spent 2 years as a coordinator for their Nightline service, a student-run peer support service. She now studies at the University of Exeter Medical School, where she has also worked on research into paediatric and mental health. We will also be joined by Dr. Jingy Alom. Jingy is a British Bangladeshi accident and emergency doctor, A&E, who works at the same trust he is born in. He studied medicine at the University of Southampton and now has an MSc, now studying an MSc in public health at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Jingy and his siblings were all educated on free school meals, and he's the first to be a doctor in his family. He comes from a council estate in East London, where health inequalities are a major issue. His ambitions are to help narrow inequality. Our final speaker is Dr. Twishaa Sheth. Twishaa is from East Midlands and works as a doctor in Essex, Cambridgeshire and North London. She loves her career because she gets to work as part of a great team, treating people from babies to the elderly. Working in ophthalmology, eye surgery, means she gets to see the joy on people's faces when they get their vision back. Our event will also be chaired by Dr. Tinaye Mapako, who is a junior doctor based in the Northwest. Tinaye studied medicine at the University of Liverpool and has a master's in law and healthcare ethics from the University of Manchester. He also co-chaired the BMA Medical Students Committee for the year 2020-2021 with Becky, and is a writer and podcaster on issues relating to healthcare and social justice. There will also be a time for us to hear from you all through the pre-submitted questions in our panelists. Thank you all for joining us this morning. I hope that you not only find our discussion interesting, but actually it might be the beginning of your own journey into medicine. Thank you.
Wonderful. That was really good to hear from Dr. Patel this morning. I think she's already stolen my thunder and introduced the wonderful Becky Bates. She's a final year medical student down in Exeter and is a wonderful advocate for medical students and medical education. I've had the pleasure of working with her in the past year. I can't think of anyone who is a better example of what it is to believe in widening participation in medicine, to make sure that the ladder is there beneath you for others to climb onto. Becky, take it away.
That was the most lovely introduction, and I'm not sure I can live up to it. But I'm so glad to be talking to you all at the event today. As has been said, I'm Becky. I'm a final year medical student now, but it's been a long journey to get there. I have had a very meandering journey, and I kind of want to walk you through that a little bit so you can see the different routes into medicine that I have to consider. And then I'll talk a little bit about kind of how I prepared for applying as well. So I am now 27, and I first applied in 2011 in the that was my first application cycle. I'd done chemistry, maths, French, and I also had an AS in biology. The UK CAP for me, which is now the UCAP for you, which is an admissions test, was paid for by my school due to being low income. I did the 4 applications and I got 2 offers, but I got AAB. So I went through clearing and I did medicinal chemistry at Newcastle. This is the Angel of the North, for anyone who's not seen it. So from 2012 to 2016, I was in Newcastle, and there I volunteered with Radio Lollipop, which is an amazing charity where you visit children on the wards of different children's hospitals and you play games with them and you try to help them not see every adult who comes into contact with them as a medical person. I played a lot of Monopoly. I was also our Students' Union Gender Equality Officer, and I volunteered with Nightline. And I will talk to you about how that all helped in a little bit as well. But what I kind of wanted to show you is that just because I'd gone through clearing and did this different degree, I was still doing things that mattered to me and that I cared about. And this is Neville, who was our mascot of Nightline, playing table tennis, trying to introduce our peer support service to the freshers. Because Nightline's kind of like Samaritans in that it's a listening service. So if you're struggling, you can ring. And when you all go to university, there will likely be a Nightline there to support you if you need it. So then I applied for my second application cycle. So it says 2015, obviously these are done in academic years. My UCAT was free due to being low income, but my GAMSAT I have to pay for from my part-time work, and that is more expensive. That's an application, an admissions test that's for graduates only. I did 4 applications. I got 3 offers for graduate entry medicine. I was thrilled. I thought, this is it, I'm going to be a doctor. And then I missed my degree grade. Now what? And something was going wrong for me, and I wasn't stupid. I was doing okay. But whilst I was planning to apply again, I hadn't given up on medicine yet. I started trying to fill in those gaps. I got a job at the Red Cross on their first call service, and I volunteered with the Cubs. And this is me using some of my experience to try to show them what mobilising in a wheelchair is like and how accessible our scout hut was. I was capable. I felt like I was pretty resilient at this point. What was going wrong? So for me, I had undiagnosed ADHD, which was only picked up through chance conversations, doing some work in mental health via Nightline. So I just wanted to say that, yes, you can be a doctor. And actually, if things are getting in the way, I was interviewing okay, there might be something else going on for you with your academics. Patients want to see themselves in their doctors. We want a more inclusive profession. There are doctors of all ethnicities, doctors with disabilities, doctors of all sexualities and gender identities, and medicine is for each and every one of you. I just wanted to take a second to say that now, because the route can be a bit tricky, but it's absolutely worth it. This is an event that I ran earlier in the year that was for doctors with chronic health conditions, disabilities, and who are neurodivergent, which is an umbrella term that covers things like ADHD, dyslexia, autism. We also have our BMA's National BAME Forum, which we're working hard as a union to try and improve that representation. So back to me, my third application cycle. My GAMSAT score lasted for 2 years, so I didn't need to pay for that again, thankfully. I only had 2 applications available to me because of my degree grade, and I was lucky to find Exeter who recognised my potential. This has been expensive for me. I have had support from a charity called Leather Sellers towards my fees, along with borrowing privately to cover some of them, and I worked all my summers. But I wanted to say that, yes, that I've tried all 3 of these routes into medicine, and the third one was what worked for me. And so you can either go to undergraduate directly, which is your UCAS application from school, and then you'd get your student finance funding your maintenance, which is your living costs and your fees. Graduate entry medicine is a 4-year accelerated course that you do after you have a degree. I understand that students need to fund a portion of their fees, but the NHS bursary and student finance are both available to them. And then there's a 5-year undergraduate course as a graduate, which is what I'm doing. And I get no loan for my fees, but because it's a professional course with a qualification, I can borrow for my living costs, which makes a big difference. So applying. This is kind of where my strategy, I don't know if it would work for everyone, but it gives you a chance to maybe have a think about what you might be doing in the next couple of years as you prepare. So know what the unis want was a big thing for me. If they say they want 2 science A levels, does that include maths? I knew I absolutely did not want to take physics. I just didn't get on with it. I didn't get on with the mechanics in maths either. So I made sure that I went through and I knew that actually doing French, for example, to A level was okay. One resource that I used was the student room. They had a big wiki. I don't know how up to date it is now, but I thought I'd show you it exists. And I think it would still give you a rough idea of what some unis are looking for. They have got up-to-date GCSEs, for example. I know that they've changed it to the numbers rather than the letters for GCSEs. And this was the sort of graph that I was working from. So it says this is, for example, Aberdeen, what their offer was, what they needed in their A-level requirements. It's looking quite blurry here. I'm hoping you can see that. If not, this is on the student room, and I got these yesterday. I had spreadsheets, and this is the end result of a spreadsheet of mine. So I had every medical school listed and what their requirements were. And I went through and I removed any I wasn't eligible for or that I didn't feel I'd be able to go to just because of distance. So this is one of our Nightline campaign posters. I knew that actually I couldn't, for example, go to Northern Ireland because I needed to be able to get home. We have some complicated family medicine in my family that I know I need to be able to get on the road and get home, ideally in less than about 4 hours if there's an emergency. So I removed those and I looked at what I was eligible for. I'm not sure this is showing up okay, but what this is was a spreadsheet where I was working on my personal statement and how I was funded. So on the left, if you can see it, we've got kind of all the files I had, which was my personal statement fodder. And then on the right, I have a spreadsheet where I was looking at everything I'd done. So Nightline, at the bottom, there were things that I just noticed in the news. I remember talking in multiple interviews about Dr. Hannah Barron-Brown, who I now have been in meetings with, which blows my mind working at the BMA. She was an absolute idol of mine before I came into medicine, but she'd had to crowdfund for her wheelchair to continue her medical studies. So I was noting things down that I had been aware of. over time. And I was looking at all my work experience and what it brought to me, which I will show you next, I think. Use those activities. So I did a big mind map, right, for my personal statement. And I actually went back to that in interviews. So, for example, Radio Lollipop, I was working with children, but it's empathy, it's experience in a hospital, it was teamwork. Nightline, it was leadership for me because I became a coordinator. It was my organisation skills of planning people's shifts. It was active listening, communication skills. It was talking about mental health, being comfortable talking about really tricky subjects like suicide. And it was a real commitment because I did that for basically my whole degree. And my part-time work as well was commitment. It was organisation and it was responsibility too. And sticking to those shifts and needing to not do everything I wanted to do at times because I needed to work to fund myself. And there will be different things for you that will do the same. You might be, I think I remember in my first personal statement talking about some fundraising I'd done for my scout group. It might be that you've been part of some clubs at school and you've been organising those. So it doesn't have to be hospital work experience because it's about the core qualities of being a doctor. You might have, I did some volunteering in it was like a day centre for older people who had dementia. And I went every Wednesday afternoon and just sat with them and talked to them and helped them with activities. Those sorts of things are all caring and you will maybe have easier access to than getting into a hospital. But it's about then looking at what you're doing, every little thing, and just kind of spreading out and going, right, what does this say about me? And how does that map to what I think a doctor is like? And then also just thinking about any difficulties, weaknesses, and times you face up to challenges, because that's something that we all have to go through. Things don't always go to plan, as you see with my journey, but also once you're in medicine, you know, not everything will go as you planned, and you need to be able to work around that and keep going because you're on this path and it's what you want to do. But there will be times you need to problem solve. There will be times you need to go, right, oh, that assessment didn't go as well. What am I doing next to do better? And those are the sorts of questions you might be asked at interview. But I think we're going to talk about that a little bit later in our panel discussion with kind of the application process. So yeah, I found this from my Nightline time. This was good luck sweets and things we gave out to students doing their exams, but good luck. We absolutely want you in our profession. My Twitter has been on the bottom left there the whole time. It's also my Instagram. If you do want to reach out, I'm happy to answer questions. We want to see a much more inclusive profession and we hope to see you join us in it. Thank you.
That was an absolutely wonderful presentation from Becky. I think that was really informative to hear more about her journey in medicine. The next speaker we have is another wonderful doctor who I've really had a great time meeting during the BMA. Jingy is, I struggle to describe how hardworking and passionate and what an advocate he is for the British Bangladeshi community, particularly during COVID, highlighting inequalities, challenging mistakes that have been made and making sure that him and his colleagues are protected and looked after. And on top of this, Jingy is also a massive advocate for widening participation in medicine. Jingy, take it away.
Thanks, Tinaye, for that kind introduction. And before I start, huge respects to Becky. I didn't know much about your journey and I've learned so much, so big respect for that. My name's Jingy, is short for Jahangir. I'm British Bangladeshi of Muslim heritage, working class. Like Latifa said, me and my whole family, we all grew up on free school meals, all the government benefits you can imagine. We lived in council houses all our lives. I'll go into a little bit more about my journey. I'm going to talk less about how I got into medicine and more about my background and what led me into studying medicine and becoming a doctor. I know Tinaye just touched upon it a little bit. But to kick off, I didn't always want to be a doctor. I decided I want to be a doctor quite late in life. A lot of people you meet at medical school will say, you know, I was born to do this. I wanted to do it since I was in nursery. When I was a young boy, my form tutor, Mr. Dean, asked me, you know, Jahangir, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said to him, Mr. Dean, I want to be a gangster. And the reason I said that was because, you know, when I grew up in East London, we didn't have many positive role models. The cute thing would be to say my dad was my role model. But my dad was a man who came from Bangladesh, who worked as a farmer in Bangladesh, who didn't have any money to go to school, so was illiterate and uneducated, who managed to come to this country and work as a labourer. My mum, she went to school up until I think year 6 before her family said she needs to help around the house and they couldn't afford for her to go to secondary school. So the role models I had were the drug dealers and the violent criminals who were from my estate. So I saw these guys draped in designer gear, driving flash cars, and I thought, I want to be like them. And so as a young boy, as a young secondary school student, life took a turn and I was a bit, I had a few behavioural issues, which I'll go into later on. And it was until I was enrolled in a program called the Youth Inclusion Program, where the school identified me as an individual who would, in 5 years, be in prison. So they enrolled me in this program to help intervene. And through that program, I managed to get elected as the Deputy Young Mayor of Tower Hamlets. So this was a borough-wide election where all school pupils from year 7 to year 12 could vote. Year 7 to year 13 could vote for their elected advocate. And in that election, I came second, so I became the Deputy Young Mayor. And Uma, the lovely lady on my left, in that black and white picture, she was the young mayor. And through that scheme, I got a seat at the Tower Hamlets Health and Wellbeing Board. And on the Tower Hamlets Health and Wellbeing Board, I learned of one statistic. People of Tower Hamlets, where I grew up, died 7 years earlier than people from West London. And as a young boy, I thought to myself, nah, that is unfair. That is so unfair. But what am I going to do to change that? And so I did a bit of research and I thought, you know, if I become a doctor, I can narrow those inequalities. And so I set off on a journey to study medicine. I had no idea how to do it. So it was a lot of Googling. And like Becky, I spent a lot of time on Student Room. Student Room was really useful to find out, you know, what medical schools require, what entrance exams or admissions tests you need to do, and what sort of things you should write in your personal statement. I wrote to 150 different doctors for work experience. 4 people replied. And I was very lucky to get some work experience with some of the best doctors in East London, which really inspired me. And then, so yeah, this is just some pictures of me in school, in Sir John Cass Secondary School in East London. But yeah, I wanted to, and yeah, this is me on my prom. Like I said, it was a bit of a journey. I've had many different hairstyles and many different looks. But no, I wanted to show you this. This was me. So this is me now, as you can see, compared to that picture there. As I said to you, I struggled with my behaviour in school because I just didn't have any positive role models. And you know, youth work and youth clubs really did me justice, and I was able to get my life back on track. And if you see here in year 9, my school teachers were predicting me grade E's, which I think are equivalent to 4s or 3s in the new system, and they just weren't acceptable to get into medical school. And it was the support that I got from outside that really helped me focus and get back on track. And this is a picture of the council house that we used to live in. So in the early years of my life, 8 of my 9 siblings, plus my grandmother and my parents, all lived in a 2-bed council house. And at the time, I thought it was fun, it was great, it was brilliant. And as I grew up, I realized, not everyone lived like that. And as a young boy, I just thought this is what life is like. Everyone lives in a council house, everyone lives in overcrowded council houses, and that's just how life is. And I got to use those life experiences that I had living in overcrowded houses to talk to policymakers as a doctor now, to explain what it really is like to come from that background and what some of the solutions might be. So I found it really important that I use my life experience in the way I am as a doctor, in the way I practice medicine, and the way I advocate for patients. This is just not even all my siblings. I've got 9 brothers and sisters and 13 nieces and nephews, so there's quite a few of us. And like I said, I'm the only doctor from my family, which can be difficult at times, but most of the times it's all good. What have I got? Yeah, so at medical school, I struggled to fit in. I was a young boy from East London with a thick East London accent, spoke a lot of slang in an area where in a circle where most people were white and middle class. It took quite a few years for me to settle in. And this picture was probably the moment I realized that I actually fit into this community. It was when we were studying for our 3rd year exams, and in the morning of our revision session, I made a passing comment to my flatmate saying, I'm a bit sad that I'm not able to go home for Eid this year. And by the time I'd come back from the library, they put on this huge dinner for me, all dressed up, and it got me a few presents, and it was lovely. And these guys don't come from my culture, don't come from my community, but made a huge effort during our quite important exams to make me feel at home. So yeah, I just wanted to share that picture and that memory with you. Yeah, so at medical school was quite busy for me. I started off trying to fit in, and once I found my feet, I started doing quite a bit. I set up an outreach program to help young people from the local area and nationally, to be honest, to think about studying medicine, to think about becoming doctors, and serving their own community. That program took off and we started doing work nationally, and I was able to advise the Medical Schools Council on how to improve binding participation. I started talking to Royal Medical Colleges who work on training doctors after medical school on how they can also become a bit more accessible. I got involved in every aspect of the medical school culture I could, from the theatre production to sports teams to student radio. I got involved with a charity called Selfless UK, where I still work, and I go out to Bangladesh once a year to run projects to deliver care. And 3 years ago, I set up a eye care service where we go around and do cataract surgery on patients or people in rural villages who just can't access that sort of care. And then I graduated with the Dean's Prize for outstanding contribution to the medical school, which was really humbling. And that was partly to do with the outreach work and partly to do with serving as the student body president, so the MedSoc president at the university. I wanted to use my role as the MedSoc president to welcome people from minority backgrounds to come and feel welcome, to make a little change to how I transitioned into medical school. And this is just some of the people that I went to medical school with. You can see, a diverse range of people studying medicine. Like Becky said earlier, within medicine, within the doctor community, the medical student community, there are people from all walks of life. It's just about really finding out where you fit in and where what your values are. And so, yeah, what my mum thinks I do, I thought I'd include this slide. Yeah, my mum will tell her friends. My mum told her friends from the first day of medical school that I was coming to Bangladesh to save everyone in the village. I hadn't even gone to my first lecture at this point. But yeah, I thought this would be quite funny to include how people perceive what a doctor is like, and then compared to what it is really like, what we actually do. This slide's a bit outdated. I mainly work in A&E at the moment in East London, Like Latifa said at the beginning, I work in the trust that I was born in, and that was really important for me to come back to East London and serve my own community. There's one thing in medicine that I've not got bored of, and it's the satisfaction of speaking to a Bengali patient and saying to them, don't worry, I speak your language. And, you know, coming to hospital is quite scary. Coming to hospital and not being able to communicate is even scarier. And to be able to do that is a huge gift and an honor to serve people in that capacity. The other things I get to do along with, oh, no, sorry, I wanted to show you this slide. So it's really important to realize that it is tough. Being a doctor is difficult. And, you know, we're here to encourage you and inspire you to consider a career in medicine. But it's also important to realize that, you know, it is tough, it's tricky. The blue ones are the day shifts that I do. The pink ones are the night shifts that I used to do as a first year doctor. You know, it's demanding, it's tiring. There's times in your life where you'll miss out on birthdays and weddings. But like I said, there's a huge amount of satisfaction in caring for people, looking after people, making them better and making them comfortable in the last few days of life. And that's something you just won't get in any other career. And so what I want to do, so like Tinaye said, my main mission in life, I want to look back in my career and say, you know, I attempted to narrow health inequalities, and I want to do that in several ways. I want to train to be an ophthalmologist. I want to be an advocate for marginalized communities, and I do that through my less in a role as a doctor and more as using my status as a doctor to open doors and to be able to speak on behalf of my community and people from my background. And, you know, just giving you an example of the pandemic, early in the pandemic, when I realized that, you know, people from my background and when I say my background, ethnic minority backgrounds, they were dying disproportionately compared to other people. And I wanted to do something about it. So I was able to, you know, talk to the mainstream media. So I went on BBC Newsnight, BBC News, Sky News, various different radio shows to talk about, to highlight the problem and what some of the solutions can be. And, you know, I was able to talk to very high profile decision makers, ministers, people who can really make change, who engaged, who, you know, noticed that, you know, it's important to listen to people who come from those backgrounds, who are affected by those issues, and they might be the people who have the solutions rather than assuming what the solutions might be. This is a picture of me on vascular surgery on Christmas Day, me and my consultant dressed up to give out Christmas presents. Being a doctor is, like I said, it's a huge privilege. You make people well, you make people comfortable, and most importantly, you're your mum's favourite child. And being one of 9, you need to be a favourite child. It's a competition every day. But yeah, so this slide is just building on what Becky said. Representation is so important. And I think we learned that in the pandemic that, you know, we need doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals, from all walks of life, not just ethnically, but all different, from all different backgrounds. And, you know, we have those already, but we need more of those in the NHS. And it's important because, you know, like I said, people need to be able to relate to their healthcare professional. And it really, you know, it really makes a difference to how care is delivered when it's delivered by people who look like you and who talk like you. And I don't know what you guys look like or talk like because I can't see you, but hopefully, you know, this talk will make you consider a career, not just in medicine, but in healthcare as well. Hopefully you go home or go back to your teachers and ask questions and be inquisitive about a career in healthcare, about a career in medicine. Like Becky, my details were on the first slide. I think your teachers can get more information about how to contact us through the BMA. I'm always very happy to read personal statements, reply to emails or tweets about how you can get into medicine or what questions you have or what obstacles you might face. And then finally, this picture, like, like I said, not even half my family, but this was the proudest moment of my life. And the graft that you put in, applying to medical school, attending the interviews, staying up late revising and putting in all the hours, going to all the placements far and wide, this picture makes it all, happiest moment of my life. And I wish every single one of you in this audience get to recreate this picture of your own, with your own families, regardless of what degree you do, and make it the happiest moment of your own life. So thank you so much for listening. I'm going to hand over back to Tinaye.
That was an absolutely wonderful presentation from Jingy, as I expected. And it's just, I just to hear your story again is inspiring. Makes me want to go back into medicine, even though I'm at work tomorrow. We have the wonderful Dr. Twishaa Sheth. She's an ophthalmologist, which is a specialist eye doctor. And I'm just really excited to hear her story and about her passion, about her career in medicine. Twishaa, please take it away.
Thanks so much, Tinaye, and thanks, Jingy and Becky. It's amazing to hear so much more about you and get to know you more. I feel a bit emotional, actually, hearing about it. So, hi, guys. My name is Twishaa. I am working as a doctor training in ophthalmology, which is eye surgery in the Essex and Cambridge and North London regions. A first-generation British Indian, not Caucasian, a woman, and I hope that some of you guys, all of you guys who are listening, can see some of yourselves in us and realize that, yeah, I can do that. If I want to be a doctor, I can do that. That's not out of reach. So I just wanted to have more of a general chat with you. I haven't got PowerPoint. I just wanted it to be more of a chat about what led me down deciding to become a doctor, and also how to kind of start thinking about what you might want to do if you're not sure. So some of you might already know, but some of you might not. And so hopefully this gives you a bit of an idea as to, how do I actually narrow it down? And if you even have an inkling that you might want to pursue a healthcare career, then how to set yourself up for that, starting now. So I had lots of hospital visits as a child, but not as a patient. So as a toddler, my mum would have me sitting at the nurse's station where she worked in the NHS, where the other nurses would be looking after me while my mum finished up her shift. I'm not sure if you'd be able to do that now, but this was back sort of, 28 years ago. And I'd be munching on the chocolate boxes from patients. Thank you, Jim. And I don't know if subconsciously maybe that led me down a path in healthcare. I actually did the same A-levels as Becky. So I did chemistry, maths, biology, and French. And I was at Nottingham University, which is amazing. It's a great city to be a student, a gorgeous campus, and lots of opportunities to do the stuff that matters to you. So I volunteered at Teddy Bear Hospital, which is where you go into nursery schools and primary schools, and you get children used to the whole idea of going to the doctor and going to the hospital, so that should they ever be, unlucky enough to need medical services, that they're like less scared of the medical profession and of the medical environment. And I was in a few bands, played sports, volunteered at local charities, and then I did my 2 years of foundation training, which is like your general doctoring, before deciding to specialise in eye surgery. And I sort of liked all specialties of medicine. So I loved working in A&E, I loved working with children, but I also really liked working with the elderly. I liked the idea of medicine, so being a physician, but also liked the idea of being a surgeon. And in ophthalmology, you get to do all of this. And through my journey, I've been able to be the chair of the welfare committee for the National Medical Students Committee, and being their wellbeing lead, I've managed to have the chance to run campaigns on medical student and junior doctor mental health to try and eliminate that stigma that people with mental health issues can't be doctors, which is something that we heard a lot of when we were starting our medical journey. But I'm hoping that now we are talking more about mental health, and there is that understanding that having mental health issues doesn't preclude you. In fact, it can be a boon and a blessing in becoming an amazing doctor and being able to relate to your patients. So back to you. So lots of you might know already what you want to do, or even have an idea. And I have to admit, I, like Jingy, didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I was always really overwhelmed when people did. So if that's you listening to this, then don't worry. when we were younger, it seemed like everyone I knew wanted to be a doctor. And I really liked science lessons. And anytime anyone asked me what I wanted to do, I kind of automatically say doctor, but without really knowing what it entailed at the time, or I don't really think I knew why I was saying that over anything else. And I realised that I didn't really have much of an exposure to a medical career or any other career. And for you guys now, there are so many options and lots of non-traditional career options out there too. You have so much more choice, I think, than we did. And careers fairs and careers websites can kind of start to give you a bit of a brainstorm overview of all of the options that are out there. So when I was thinking about this, I thought, what would I want to know when I was in your shoes? And I think I'd want to know how to whittle that down. Like, how do you know what you want to do? And I think it comes down to three things. So the first is doing something that you like, but not worrying about this being a passion, or not worrying about not having a passion. Now, lots of my friends at school would talk about this passion for what they did. And though it's admirable and important, it's important to realize that not everyone has that, eureka moment or that true infatuation style passion for their work. And very few people are lucky enough to truly love every single minute of their work. Now, it's definitely important to enjoy and like what you do. So do think of the particular parts of science that you do enjoy and what career path that might lead you down. And then the second thing is something that you're good at or have an aptitude or knack for. So again, you might already know what this is, but if not, it can be helpful to have regular chats with your family or your friends about it, speaking to your teachers, or scheduling a chat with one that you get on with and help you to figure this out. And you might have already heard from your teachers saying, oh, you're really good at this, or you've got a real knack for that. So that's the second thing to bear in mind. So something that you like, something that you're good at. And then finally, how important is stability and future-proofness to you? Now, healthcare staff are never going to make big bucks, really, but you will almost always be in a job. So speaking to teachers at my school was really helpful. And through chats, I realised that I would really enjoy a career working with people of all ages, where it would never be a desk job. I loved the idea of making positive change happen, and medicine kind of encompassed all the subjects that I love, so math, science, art, language, but I realized that I really didn't have any exposure to it, and just like Jingy and Becky, actively sought out opportunities for work experience. So in terms of organizing work experience, lots of people will do 1 week, so you have your 5 days working at your 5 working days in school, and often it's in one randomly allocated field. And I'm not sure if this is enough. I think it's really important to actively explore every option on your potential shortlist. And you can also explore the themes in each choice, because I personally found it very, very difficult to have lots and lots of work experience in a hospital, in a clinic, or in a theatre. Now, it is important to be able to have the chance to see what the hospital environment and the day-to-day job will look like, but you can also explore the themes in each of your choices. So if you're thinking about medicine or nursing, you can spend time in a nursing home or in a special needs school or in a community centre, and volunteering in these environments is often easier to get than work experience. You can also volunteer in non-medical roles in your local hospital. So volunteer with the tea trolley or with the lunches, or volunteer as a counsellor, so that you're able to have chats with patients who are in hospital for long periods of time. And again, these will help you to explore the themes that you'll be working with if you do decide to become a doctor, and explore if working with patients and with people is really for you. So I did work experience in these ways. So in a nursing home, in my community centre, in a nursery, and also in a special needs school. And it gave me a realistic view of the pros and cons. And I saw that there were lots of challenges, but also loads of variety and enjoyment and fulfillment in medicine. Now, when you do this, it's important to keep a diary of every experience that you do and every encounter that you have, because it will be really useful when you come to university interviews. And you'll think that you will remember the stuff, you'll think, oh, how would I forget, this amazing moment that I had with this care home resident, or how I felt when, I helped someone feel better about themselves in my community centre. But you will forget. So do make a note of every experience that you have for your interview. And then the third step is to go to university open days early so that you can see what the options are and start making plans of how to get there. I wish I thought of this earlier. So I only went to open days the year that I applied, like I think most people would. But I think going now, so much earlier than you might think, would be a great chance to meet people doing the subjects that you're interested in and speaking with them about what career paths that might lead them down. And that can give you ideas and inspiration earlier on if, like me, you're not sure if medicine is for you. Get as much exposure as you can to what they need, because all medical schools, as Becky's outlined, they all want slightly different things from you. They all have different entrance exam requirements, different weights on your GCSE grades, different extracurricular viewpoints. So it's more of like a matching process than a one-size-fits-all process. And the open days can be a great way to find out which medical school matches you best. So don't get taken in by hearsay of, oh, I hear you need to get into medical school, because all medical schools are different and there will be one that matches you more than others. And then step 4 is kind of understanding what you have to do from now to get there. And one of the most important things is your grades, because without at least predicted grades, that there'll be no offer. So do spend your time, focusing on the hard work, as Jingy says, will be worth it. Medicine does need a lot of time management, and unis do like to see that you're well-rounded. So don't worry about doing thousands and hundreds of extracurriculars, but do 1 or 2 that you love and do them well. So if you can find an activity that means that you're part of the team, even better. So if you enjoy a sport, join your school team. If you play an instrument, keep working hard on your grades. These are all things that might take a slight pause during your A-levels, so it's good to do as much as you can early on in school life. And then the last thing to say is no decision is massively permanent. So don't worry about getting it wrong. I think it can be a really stressful time, especially as you're coming up to your GCSEs, your A-levels. It can feel like a lot of pressure in terms of, I've got to make this massive life decision now. I want to tell you that it's not permanent. Don't worry about getting it wrong. Lots of people go into one career path and then take steps to convert to another. And lots of people in medicine, even after medical school, then go into other healthcare or even non-healthcare related specialties. But if you do even have the slightest inkling that you might want to work in healthcare, so in medicine or nursing, midwifery, healthcare science, anything like that, do fully explore it and go for it, because despite all of its difficulties, no job is really easy. And knowing that at the end of the day, you work in healthcare will be one of the most rewarding decisions that you make. And I realise now that those chocolate boxes that I was munching on the nurse's station didn't appear by magic, but they're a sign really of that relationship between doctor and patient. You get to be there for patients at their most vulnerable, at their time of need. And it is the most incredible feeling being able to see them get better. I think I did that. And finally, every single barrier has 2 sides. Everything in the world really has 2 sides. Any event can be seen from 2 completely different viewpoints, and you can probably make a reasoned argument for each one. So if you ever feel like, or if anyone ever tells you that it's a barrier for you to enter medicine because you've got immigrant parents, or because you're not Caucasian, or because you're a woman, remember that all of these things are things that in their own way will make you a better doctor. And it means that you can give something from that aspect that others may not be able to your patients. Your patients aren't just from one background, so it's really important that we aren't either. So I hope that's helped. I hope it's reassured you that even if you're not 100% sure that, if medicine is something that you really want to do, that you can take your time, explore all of the options. It's never too late, and know that if you want to do it, you definitely can do it. So thanks so much for listening, and I'll hand back over to Tinaye.
Oh, I think that was just a wonderful way to end our presentations, Twishaa. It's just been really wonderful to hear from you all. And I think this is a really important message that we all share. We want doctors from every single background. We want working class doctors and Gypsy, Roma and traveller doctors and doctors with disabilities and LGBT plus doctors and, you know, black and brown doctors, doctors from any background that you can think of. If you're a care leaver, you know, if your parents aren't doctors, whatever it is. And I just know and have so many wonderful colleagues who come from all over the world, who have all sorts of different experiences. And, you know, seeing my consultant speak Spanish to a patient who didn't think there was anyone who was able to speak her language during a consultation, you know, having people understand the different walks of life that everyone have been through just helps deliver really good patient care. And yeah, we want you to be part of our profession, to join us. So you've given us lots of really wonderful questions that we're going to delve straight into. And I guess I'm going to open this up to Becky for us to start. And one of the first questions we have in the studying medicine question is how to prepare for entry exams. So Becky, what advice would you offer to people about preparing for entry exams?
Okay, so as you all saw, I did a few entry exams. I did the UK CAT a few times, and I always did well in the UK CAT, and I think part of that was because I enjoyed puzzles. But one thing I would say is they do, although they tell you that you can't prepare for it, familiarity is really helpful. And the UCAT, they have free online question banks, including timed ones, and including with the extra time you get if you have a special educational needs, you can do it with their timing as well. I borrowed a UCAT book from a friend who'd applied, and I realised that that speaks to a position of privilege in the fact that my school did have a couple of people apply for medicine. But I would hope that potentially your school library might be able to help you secure that. Maybe that's something you could share. If not, I'd be keen to kind of maybe we need to look as an organisation about how we look at those resources. I think when I was applying, I also did end up for a month. I couldn't really afford to, but I paid for a question bank. And I have done that whilst I've been at medical school as well. But what I have done with those is I have shared them with friends to split the cost. I don't necessarily think that it's the content that matters. I think it's the familiarity with the questions. So potentially going through those online banks and then coming back to them when you've had a bit of time away, and just being really clear about the question type is really helpful for the UCAP, just because it is really different to any other exam. Whereas with the BMAT, I believe that's more, I never took the BMAT, so you'd need to look it up. But my understanding is that's more science-based questions around kind of biology, chemistry, and things like that. So it would potentially be something to go over your A-level work with. If you do decide to go the graduate entry route, the GAMSAT is a full 8-hour day with 3 different sections. You write an essay as part of it, you do some kind of social sciences and humanities interpretation questions, and you do some science interpretation questions, but they give you the information and then you're analysing it. So that's quite different to prepare for, but obviously this is a school event and something that maybe in 4 years you want to look at, but maybe if you do get the graduate route, your libraries might again have access to some GAMSAT resources. The main thing I did want to just make sure everyone knew was about the financial bursary for the UCAT. If you are low income, I didn't know about it the first time around, but as I said, my school paid for it. But the second time around, I could show them that I got the maximum student loan, and they just gave me it for free, which made a huge difference, because I think it's about £55 if you do it early, or £80 if you do it in the last sort of month, because it gets more. There's fewer slots at Pearson VUE test centres. So it's like when you do, if any of you have done driving theory, it's one of those test centres, so you need to get the spot. So it gets a bit more expensive later on, but I wanted to give myself as long as possible to prepare for it. But that was the main thing I wanted everyone to know, is look online, submit your evidence and get that for free, because that makes a huge difference to the entry cost.
Wonderful. Does anyone else have any advice?
Yeah, that's brilliant advice, actually. And just to add one thing is, you'll probably hear of all these courses, UK CAT courses and BMAT courses, and it's fine if you want to go on them, but I just want to emphasise how you don't have to go on them. There are loads of free resources too online. So it's a while ago now I decided it, but the UK CAT, which obviously Becky said now the UCAT, they have got free practice questions online. Talking to people in the year above, asking your teachers to put you in touch with, people. It's been, I think, 10 years now since I started medical school, and people from my secondary school still get in touch with me because, teachers will put you in touch with people who have gone on to do the things that you want to do. And talking to people in the year above or people who've done it before is just as valuable as, going on all these courses that you have to pay for. So, that there is no real need to feel like you need to pay for all these courses and go on. You can definitely do fine without doing that.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. A lot of these, you've got to be, really careful and shop around if paying for one of these courses is something that you decide to do. But there are lots of bursaries and funding available. Honestly, go through a very committed Google search, ask your local council, like if you're a member of a church or any other religious organization or a community group of any kind. There's lots of people able and offering to give you support to try and reduce some of those financial barriers. I think this is a really good question. I'm going to go straight to you for this one, Jingy. What is your one tip for getting into medicine?
Oh, my one tip to getting into medicine, I think it would be preparation. I think you need to start things early. Like I think everyone has mentioned during their talks, you need to prepare early, whether that's for your UCAT, whether that's for your personal statement, or whether that's for your interview or visiting different medical schools. It's stressful applying as it is, but if you give yourself enough time, then you can be properly, you have proper insight into where you're applying and what you're applying to. Like everyone said here, everyone's done different kind of work experience. What I want to make absolutely clear is you don't need to get work experience in a hospital or a GP practice in order to apply to medical school. Becky said something really important during her talk. It's how you relate those life experiences to being a good doctor. It's just being prepared. That's my top tip.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to emphasize. Like, some of the best doctors I work with are people who didn't have any formal work experience, but they worked in Tesco, and it's because they got exposure to meeting lots of different people and talking and negotiating with them, as you do with sometimes difficult shop customers. That definitely prepares you for a life in medicine. I think this is a really good question. We'll go back to you, Jingy, because you have a particularly big family. Does your family constantly bombard you with questions about medicine and healthcare?
Yeah, So like I said, I'm the only doctor from my family. My parents are quite elderly. None of my siblings are clinical, so don't work in any parts of the NHS. So when you're not at work, you're on call for your family. Someone will call you saying, I've got this symptom, or I've just started this medication. What do you think? Over the pandemic, I've done a lot of vaccine confidence work. So trying to educate my family, my friends, and my community on the vaccine. And so it's been non-stop, talking to people about, what are the pros of the vaccine, what are the side effects of the vaccine. I know some of you guys will start taking the vaccine soon as well. You're always constantly talking to people about their health, their medication, some of the symptoms they've got. So it's non-stop.
No, definitely. I can definitely relate to that. And I think sometimes people overestimate experience as someone who's been working as a doctor for 7 weeks now, and my expertise in like hepatobiliary surgery and all sorts. And I'm like, maybe go to your GP first. Good port of call. Wonderful. I think what I really want to
add something there. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things that I found with my family, so as I alluded to, I didn't want to be too far from home because we have some really complicated things going on in my family in different health ways. And one of the things that I found most empowering has been when they've sent me letters and said, what does this mean? And unfortunately, their healthcare professional hasn't explained it to them, what's happening with them. And even just being able to say, so for example, hepatobiliary, what that means is this relates to, I'm panicking now, this is the liver and the bile duct. But being able to sort of say, well, this is what this test means. This is why they're bringing you back. I don't have the answers. I can't diagnose your complicated health issues, but what I can do is I can help you understand what's happening to you. It's really sad that that isn't something that they automatically are getting at all times from their healthcare providers, but it's been really wonderful to be able to say, okay, well, this is why you've been referred to this. This is what this is saying. This is why they're not bringing you back, or this is why you've been put in this way. And that's been, yeah. So it's not always kind of, they need my knowledge. It's more that you end up speaking this extra language that can be really helpful to try and just explain with your family.
Yeah, it's just to add on to that, I think, Becky, you forget when you study and work in the NHS that it's actually really complicated to navigate. And because you work in the system or you study in the system, you sort of figure out how to do things, who to contact to change your appointment, or where, like, how to get a scan, or when to get your blood tests, or who to speak to for this and that. And it becomes sort of second nature to you being in the system. But when you're outside of the system, it can be really overwhelming and complicated.
And I think actually not having that, not necessarily having that exposure to medicine before you get into medical school can help, because you can relate. Same with your patients, it's really nice when sometimes you have patients coming to the clinic, they've been coming for years and years and years with the condition, but like you said, Becky, no one's ever taken the time to explain to them what it means, why they're taking the medication that they're taking. It's a really nice feeling to be able to give that, and that is something that even those of you who haven't got exposure to medicine, before you go into medical school, you might even be able to do it better because you can relate a little bit more.
No, I think that's really important. One of my favorite things at the moment in my jobs is patient phone calls, because we're still not having visiting during COVID, having family members come up and ask me what's going on or what's happening with this, and then them being able to leave reassured and with a clear idea of the plan, for me it just leaves you the really positive feeling. And I remember my dad got diagnosed with having the risk of diabetes. And he was like, oh, okay, that's fine. And I was like, no, Dad, you need to take this seriously. This is important. This is not something you can brush off. And I had this long conversation with him. And now, honestly, he's the most health conscious man you'll ever meet. And you can't even eat a biscuit around him, because he'll talk to you about how many calories are in it or what it's going to do to your blood sugar. And I think it's a wonderful privilege to be able to share this with family, to help guide people through what is actually a very difficult and complicated system.
I think what you're highlighting today is when people from different backgrounds go to medical school, it's not only a benefit to the individual, but it's a benefit to their families and their communities around them.
Yeah, no, definitely. Oh, wonderful. Oh, you guys have really opened up that question, as I thought you would. And I sort of linking on from what I said, what is everyone's favorite aspect of their job? Twishaa, what's your favorite aspect of your job?
I mean, I'm definitely biased, but I don't think you'll find another job where you all work as such a team together for exactly the same goal. I just can't think of anything else where it's such a team effort for literally one person, your one patient. And I love that feeling of seeing the difference in your patient when I was doing sort of general doctoring, being unwell and then getting better. It's incredible, and helping their families through some of the most challenging times they will face. It's just amazing. And now, in eyes, you get to see it on the most emotional level. It's incredible. I once had a patient, it was an elderly gentleman, and he was coming in to have his cataract removed, and the cataract is when the lens in your eye becomes cloudy, so people can't see as well. It happens to us all when we get old enough, and there's a procedure that you do to take it out and put a clear lens in place to help with their vision. And when I was doing the consent form, which is where you talk to the patient about the procedure and the risks and things like that before the surgery, he was like, yeah, I'm really struggling because I actually can't see the vegetables on my plate, and my wife thinks I don't like her cooking because I'm leaving the food on the plate. I said, okay, well, and then we talked through the procedure, and then that was actually my first ever procedure that I did, my consultant. And so I called the patient back a couple of weeks later to see how things had gone. And I said, oh, how are things with your wife? And he said, it's amazing. I can see everything so clearly now. And actually now I can tell her where all the cobwebs are on the ceiling for her to clean up. It's incredible being able to have that rapport with patients and take them through, you know, a difficult time, and seeing that you can make positive impact with your team. I just can't think of anything like it. So yeah, that's what it's all about, really.
I love that. That's a really wonderful story. Becky, I was curious to what you think as a medical student. What's your favourite thing about being a medical student?
So I think in a way it's similar, but in terms of supporting someone things can become quite routine for us, but we have to never forget that actually, you know, being in hospital is unusual for anyone else, you know. And I think as a medical student, you get so much more time with people. So it's not so much the treatment and seeing them better, it's being able to sit with them, have the time to talk to them. If they're nervous, I spent a day where basically I followed a lady she was waiting for an inpatient procedure to have a very small lump removed from her breast. And I followed her. She was a bit nervous and she didn't know where the clinic was to put a wire in so that they could see when they did the operation, they could see it because it was so small. You do something with a wire to guide that. And she was going to have that done and she didn't know where that was. So I walked with her and she kind of actually said, I'm a bit more nervous, I think, than I'd realised. And so I stayed with her whilst this procedure happened. They couldn't find the lump. She was feeling quite tense. And actually being able to be with her, then walk her back from that wire procedure back to the ward, stay with her until she went in for her operation. She actually called me over after her operation. I was just walking past and she went, thank you for today. And I didn't realise I'd made such a difference, because to me, all I was doing was talking to her and kind of just sitting with her. And obviously I was quite interested in what her journey was anyway, because I was learning about breast surgery that week. But the impact you can have, because we have more time as medical students, you need to get through all this jobs list. It's the same when I'm on GP, being able to have half an hour to talk to a patient and really have them explain everything and talk about things. It's such a privilege that people trust you with these things. And also so lovely when talking to them and having those conversations, they do tell you what an impact it's made. Because it can feel a little bit like you're a bit of a loose part when you're on the wards and you're kind of shadowing. So it's really lovely when there are these opportunities that maybe some of the doctors aren't getting to just spend that time, does have an impact. I think that's been the best thing about being a medical student for me so far.
Well, that's really wonderful. Jingy, I'm going to give you the more sort of difficult question about what are some of the cons of the job. One of our students has asked a very strident question. They said, was there a point where you wanted to quit your job? Did you ever get tempted to quit and go for an easier job? So I'm going to open that up to the floor.
It's funny that you asked me this question, because I failed my first year of medical school. I failed all my exams in the first year of medical school, and the medical school said to me, you know, maybe you should reconsider your career choices. And, you know, I blame it partly because I just couldn't transition into medical school that well. And so I suffered a lot in terms of academically. And so I got a job working at PwC, which is a private sector firm that does accounting, auditing and whatnot. It was a very well-paid job. If I stayed in that job, then I would have done really well. A lot of my non-medic friends go on to aim to work at those big organizations. And so, yeah, I you know, when the medical school said to me, you know, you should think about whether or not you want to do this, I also thought to myself, is this really for you? Like, is this what you really want to do? And it was only until I worked at PwC when I realized, you know, there's no satisfaction in this job. Like, I'm just making a rich person more rich. Whereas, you know, in healthcare, no matter how tough your day is, you know, I go home, I work in A&E, so I spend very little time with the same patients. But you go home feeling like you've made a difference and a change to someone's life. And and that, that is different to some of the other jobs that I've had. So yeah, there's been times, some of the downsides of the job, like I said in my presentation, working full time as a junior doctor is intense. You'll miss weddings, you'll miss birthdays, you'll miss some, big occasions, just because of how the rota is panned out and how your work life is. But the time off that you get with your family, you cherish, and the difference that you make to people's lives, it's like the others said, it's like no other job. Like the satisfaction you get, the impact you have on people's lives. You meet them at their most vulnerable, and you can ask them any question in the world and they'll tell you honestly those answers, and after they see you, hopefully they get better. And for those people who don't get better, you have the privilege to be there in their last few moments of life and make them comfortable. And I didn't really realize that until I apologized to someone when their mum passed away, because I felt like I was a failure. And she said, no, you actually made my mum comfortable in those last few days and gave us a chance as a family to say goodbye. And that is, tell me another job where you get that sort of privilege.
And sort of touching on your last point, it's about how do you find coping with the loss of patients? Twishaa, do you have any thoughts for us?
It's really difficult. I think everybody will remember the first time that they encountered loss in their medical career. It's hard because I think medicine sort of attracts, people who are maybe a little bit more sensitive. We feel things a little bit more. We're trained to have that empathy as well, and it is really, really tough when that happens. I don't think there is probably an easy way around it. It happened to me on my first set of night shift, which was actually Christmas Day. So I was finishing my night shift every morning. On my first set of night shift, working as an F1 doctor. So that's your first year of general doctoring after you pass through medical school. And yeah, I remember it being morning. So the night shift was meant to finish at 8. But there was a crash call, which basically means you guys will have seen it on TV programs where cardiac arrest bleep goes off, which means that somebody is heart stopped, and you just drop what you're doing, and it is that moment where you're running to the ward to try and star and back. It was really, really difficult when that very tough and physically very intense process doesn't have a good outcome, and often it doesn't. It was really hard also speaking to the family, and I think the only thing that got me through it was knowing that everyone else in the team felt exactly the same way. Years before COVID, we had a team hug we talked about after we spoke to the family. Everyone wanted to get home for Christmas, but we didn't go for another couple of hours because we just sat there talking about it, talking about our feelings, and that really, really helped. And since then, I think it's just become a little bit more natural to realise that it is going to be hard. There isn't an easy way around it. And I think at the beginning, I thought, I should know what I'm doing in this situation. I should have control over my feelings. But you realise that that's not a bad thing. It is natural to feel that. It's a very long-winded answer, but essentially it's difficult, and you just have to accept that it will be difficult, but you will have the most amazing team to help you do that.
Yeah, I think
not long-winded at all. Go on, Jingy.
I think it's not just death that can upset you as a doctor. Everyone, I think, in medicine has their own triggers. For me, I'm quite open about it in the workplace. I say to people, young cancer and domestic violence are the two things that really trigger me at work. And interestingly, like Twishaa said, when you start, you say you beat yourself up. You're like, why am I getting upset about this? But as you spend more time as a doctor and as a medical student, you become more familiar with your boundaries, and you become more open about that, and you're like, it's okay to be upset about this because something devastating has happened. And because you see devastating things every day, it doesn't make one thing less than the other. And it's just remembering that and, you know, being able to communicate your feelings and telling people actually, yeah, you know what, I just need 5 minutes after this crash call to get a cup of tea and to just gather myself. And when you're brand new, you just think no time to, you know, I should go on to the next job, to the next call and move on. And that exhausts you and you get burnt out. But like I said, once you become familiar with your boundaries and you realize the things that upset you, you're able to communicate those things and tell your team, tell your seniors, tell your juniors, I'm going to have a few minutes out just to gather myself and then I'll be back. Otherwise, you're just going to burn out emotionally and physically.
No, I think that's really important. I think you've got to, as well as advocating for your patients, looking after yourself. And I think these are really important skills that you need to start developing as you start going through the really big exams throughout your life. And if you try and input these skills and habits now, it'll ease you through life, whatever career that you end up going into. Yeah, looking after yourself is really important. Breaks always make you more productive. Sometimes it's a tough thing to tell yourself, but it always does. Sort of continuing on with this theme, I think this is a really good question for whoever submitted it. They ask, is there a patient who you wish you'd given a different treatment plan to? Anyone got any thoughts?
Yeah, it's hard to say really, because one good thing about medicine is for a lot of it, there's never a 100% right or 100% wrong answer. I mean, there's obviously treatments that you give for certain conditions, which you're trained to do, and then within that, there's often options. And the amazing thing about, especially in the UK, I think, when we offer treatment to patients, it's never well, this is what we will be doing. It's generally always a chat with the patient and their family to, right, well, these are the options. There's always the option of not doing anything, or there are these other options. These are the advantages, these are the disadvantages, and we make that decision sort of together with the patient. And I know that not all healthcare systems are quite like that, and there's different healthcare cultures in different countries too. And some patients don't want that, some patients just want to be told what to do. But I think generally you make that decision in partnership with your team and your patient and their family, and that there are lots of safe options. So the other thing I think is we're also sort of trained to make sure that no matter what treatment option you give the patient, you always give them a bit of what's called like a safety net. So say if you're seeing them in the clinic or in A&E, say, right, well, we've got the option of doing this or doing this. Say if we give you this option and you take this medication and go home, you must come back to us if you feel that you're getting more unwell or if you feel that, that things aren't improving. So I think generally we're kind of, if you go into medicine, you will have this training of being safe. No matter what treatment option you end up going for, you'll have a good safety net with it. So yeah, no specific examples come to mind. I don't know if you guys had anything else to say or anything specific.
Yeah, I think one of the skills that you learn as a doctor is weighing up risk and benefit. And like Twishaa said, the beauty of working in the NHS, it's all patient-centered. Whenever you offer a patient anything, you say to them, look, I'm never going to force you to take this or sign up or agree to this procedure. It's completely up to you. My job is to highlight what the risks are and what the benefits are for you. And everything, there's a level of uncertainty in everything in medicine. Every medication you prescribe has a side effect, and it might have a risk of 1 in 1 million or 1 in 10 million. And if it happens to that one patient, it's 100% for them. They don't care about the other 999,999. It doesn't matter to them because they're the ones that have been affected by it. But I think it's how you deal with those sort of outcomes. I've had a few surgical jobs where, people have gone in for procedures, for operations, and then have become unwell after the operations and have had to spend time in intensive care. But you highlight those possibilities when you speak to patients. It's a collaborative effort when you look after someone in the UK. I've worked in Bangladesh where it's completely different. The doctor tells you what you're going to have and you're going to have it. And the patient just respects that opinion. Whereas here in the UK, it's patient-centered. We offer the treatment to the patient and highlight pros and cons, risks and benefit, and help them make that decision.
Sort of leading on from that question, I was just wondering, how do people cope with stress? Becky, do you have any good either tips or suggestions, or just any experiences of how you've dealt with stress or being under pressure?
So one thing I will say is that med school is stressful. I'm really lucky in that I'm at a med school where they believe that we should have sort of almost a 9 to 5, particularly in our preclinical years. There was time in our schedule that we could do our revision in that time and have a normal week. But you will always feel like you go home and there's something you could be reading, something you could be doing, whether it's preparing something extracurricularly. For me, obviously, I got very involved in the BMA because I believe in representation. But there will always be then when you're doing those extracurriculars, should I be revising? There is this real feeling that you should always be working on something. And it's really important that isn't, you don't let yourself kind of, you don't let that become the reality, because if you just keep going and keep going, you'll burn out. A saying I love is that you can't pour tea from an empty teapot. And it's because if you're trying to keep giving and keep giving, you've run out. That's not going to be helping anyone. So for me, one of the things that I do when I'm noticing that I am stressed or that everything's very busy is I actually schedule in my calendar. And this sounds sort of counterintuitive, but I will schedule an hour and it will be, right, you're free from screen time, or it will be that in those stressful times, I say, right, I'm going to do the Meerkat movies. I'm going to do 2 for Tuesday. We're going to the cinema, because I can't be on my phone in the cinema. I can't be on technology, and I'm with a friend and I've got something we're talking about afterwards. But I make sure that I schedule those things in, because I think it's really important, not least because, if I'm exhausted, then I'm not learning anyway. It's not good quality learning time. If I'm spending 8 hours and all I'm doing is staring at a book, I can guarantee that by the end of that, I won't be taking that in. It's not good quality time. It's so much better to split that time up. And the same, and when I'm on really intense shifts, if I'm on a really intense rotation, I do give myself less to do in the other time, because I want to make sure that I'm present. If I'm doing a long A&E shift, for example, shadowing, and there's lots of different things going on, I know that there's not one thing that I can revise for that, because you don't know necessarily what's coming through the door. And so I just kind of go, right, this week, I'm going to just be present. My focus is just having as much energy as possible to learn as much as I can from those doctors. But yeah, I think the main thing is it's being mindful, and it's being aware that actually resting is a completely legitimate activity. I do try to be intentional with it. I try not to just be mindlessly watching Netflix, because I think I don't feel good after that. But I like to intentionally say, right, this hour is I'm going to read a book, or I'm going to do something that's for my interest, not for medicine. And that kind of helps me, because I think there's something about me that means I have to legitimize that in my head, but I think it's really important to block that time out.
Yeah, I think, that's I couldn't have put it better myself. I think particularly when you start working as a doctor, I think the thing I found is being organized. If I show you when I had my first on-call shift, so that's after hours where most people were, there's less staff, and I'm the junior doctor who's covering most of the medical wards, which I think is like 9 in my hospital. I had about 75 different scraps of paper all everywhere flying around with different bits of information, and this person in bed 11, blah, blah, blah. Whereas like last week on my on-call shift, I have a book, everything is not put in tiny little segments, and there's endless check boxes telling me where and when to look. And yeah, being organized and being prepared is an absolute lifesaver. I've got to have a cup of tea on that second on-call shift, so clearly very effective. Wonderful. I think what I'd like to sort of end on in the last few minutes is sort of talk about What do we all think about some of the most important qualities of being a doctor?
I think having a genuine work ethic. I don't think it's important to be the brainiest person in your class or, you know, the top of the class. You just have to want to learn and want to work hard. It doesn't necessarily have to mean that you're the one that gets top marks every single time. Having that real desire to be able to learn from anyone and work with what that wants to work with people. I think everything else you will learn from medicine. So don't feel that, you know, if it's something that you really want to do, don't feel that you don't have a particular quality and that means that you can't do it. Everything you will learn through medical school and on the job. And the thing that you probably have to just have is a genuine work ethic. Feel that, okay, that's okay. I'll put in the graft because I know that I've got this amazing job at the end of it.
I think for me, it's compassion. Everyone at the end of medical school, on your first day of F1 and your first day as a doctor, everyone has passed finals. Everyone has that knowledge. Everyone has that competency. Patients know that already, but what patients really want to know is how much you care about them, how much you, as an individual. I know you're looking after several patients, but patients want to know that you care about them. And so having compassion, I think, is the most important thing for me. Looking at some of my colleagues who get burnt out, who then sort of like dip and, you know, drop their compassion, you know, it doesn't do anyone justice, and not yourself, not your patients, not your team members. So once you start losing that compassion, I think it's time to have a break, whether that's some annual leave or a career break. But I think the most important thing for me in medicine is compassion.
I think for me, it's almost the opposite of not the opposite of what's being said, because those are important, but I wanted to really let everyone know there isn't one personality type that goes into medicine. If you are someone who's really comfortable doing the same thing every day, you might suit something like pathology, or you might suit a surgical specialty where you're getting really good at a specific operation. For me, I can't imagine doing the same thing every day. I'm quite interested in things like A&E, where different things come through the door. I'm also interested in psychiatry, where every patient does have that different story. And I would say that comes right through then to your interviews. There isn't one type of medical student. I remember having a question about kind of what do I think a failing is in the health system, and I think there were some really big things in the news at the time that you could talk about. And I talked about actually Dr. Hannah Barenbrown. I talked about the fact that she had to crowdfund her wheelchair and what a tragedy I thought that was. In one interview, I talked about the Discworld books, actually, by an author, Terry Pratchett, which parodies a lot of the real world, but also has a lot of satire and a lot of stuff around justice and really helped me understand the world. And I talked about that, and I was passionate about that. And I think that comes across. And just don't think that there is a right answer in those questions. Don't think there is a one type, that person is like a doctor, because we are diverse. There are so many different specialties that need different things, that need those communication skills, that need that really fine detail, that need a more overarching umbrella look. And I think you can look inside yourself, you can work out who you are, and then really focus on that when you're thinking about whether medicine's right for you. Can you see this fitting in? And if you don't think it is, reach out to someone and say, I thought I was interested in medicine. I'm not sure because of this, and I'm sure we can find someone. I remember being in a disability event thinking, oh, I've got ADHD, maybe I can't do this because organisation is harder for me. And them going, I know some amazing ADHD doctors in an emergency department who can keep track of 12 different things at once. And I had never thought that ADHD was a strength. I just thought it was something I needed to be fighting through. There is space for all of us. And that's kind of what I wanted to end on. But it is about then just really examining that, drilling down, doing a mind map, working out how that all fits into what your medical career could be, because there are so many possibilities.
Thank you so much for that, Becky. What a wonderful way to end our session today. We've had 3 wonderful speakers who've just given us so much, re-inspired me, certainly. So yeah, please reach out, follow, engage with Becky and Jingy and all of our speakers today. I really want to thank all of them for their wonderful contribution and giving up their precious spare time to come and speak with us today. I really want to thank my colleagues at the BMA for organising this event, Nina Barry, Darsh Nagole and Stephen Littermore, who sent all of our wonderful tech support and organisation to putting on a wonderful event. Again, to thank Dr. Patel for her wonderful video this morning. I really hope that you guys have got something out of this event. I know that it's recorded and you'll be able to access some of the PowerPoints and this video later as well. So yeah, I really hope to maybe see some of you working on the wards or out in GP practice someday. Thank you all so much for coming.